Have you ever wondered how the Israel-Palestine conflict started and what has led to the current state of affairs? It's a story that begins in the late 19th century, a time when the world was seeing a surge of nationalism. In the heart of Europe, a movement was steadily gaining momentum. This was Zionism, an ideology advocating for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in what was then known as Palestine. While Jews had been part of the region's tapestry for millennia, Zionism was a response to the rising tide of anti-Semitism in Europe. The year 1917 marked a crucial point in this narrative, with the issuing of the Balfour Declaration. This British policy statement expressed support for the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Little did anyone know this was the beginning of a long and complex conflict, spurred by competing nationalistic ambitions. The creation of the State of Israel in 1948 was a turning point in the conflict. But how did this come about? In the aftermath of the Second World War and the horrors of the Holocaust, the plight of European Jews was spotlighted on the global stage. This tragic event, in which 6 million Jews were systematically murdered, had a profound impact on world opinion, creating a sense of urgency to find a homeland for the Jewish people. This led to the United Nations proposing the Partition Plan in 1947, a scheme to divide British-controlled Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. The Jewish community accepted this plan, but it was rejected by the Arab states and Palestinian leadership, leading to a series of violent conflicts. Following the withdrawal of Britain from Palestine in May 1948, the Jewish leadership declared the establishment of the State of Israel. Almost immediately, neighboring Arab states launched a military intervention, marking the start of the First Arab-Israeli War. Simultaneously, the Palestinian population experienced a mass displacement known as the Nakba, or disaster, where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were expelled from their homes or fled the conflict. The establishment of Israel dramatically changed the region, setting the stage for decades of strife. The newly formed state was now at the epicenter of a complex and deeply rooted conflict, a conflict that would shape the Middle East for generations to come. Wars and uprisings have been a recurring theme in this conflict. But what were they really about? Let's start with the Six-Day War, a brief but intense conflict in June of 1967. Israel, anticipating an imminent attack from Arab nations, launched a preemptive strike. In less than a week, Israel had seized control of the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. This war drastically changed the geography of the region and further entrenched the division between Israelis and Palestinians. Just a handful of years later, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel in 1973. Known as the Yom Kippur War, this conflict ended with a ceasefire, but not before heavy casualties on both sides. It led to the eventual return of the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt, but the status of the other territories remained contentious. The unresolved issues from these wars have fueled ongoing tensions and given rise to major uprisings. The First Intifada, a grassroots rebellion that started in 1987, saw Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip rise up against Israeli occupation. The Second Intifada, which began in 2000, was far more violent, with suicide bombings and military operations causing a tragic loss of life on both sides. These uprisings, or intifadas, have further emphasized the deep-seated issues at the heart of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The control over the West Bank and Gaza Strip, the rights of Palestinian refugees, and the status of Jerusalem are just a few of the unresolved issues that continue to fuel the conflict. Despite numerous attempts at peace, the cycle of violence and counter-violence persists. The stakes are high, and the path to resolution remains unclear. These wars and uprisings are not just historical events, they are ongoing realities that continue to shape the lives of Israelis and Palestinians. These events further complicated the situation, leading to a cycle of violence and counter-violence. Despite the conflict, there have been attempts at peace. So, where do we stand today? In the quest for peace, several significant efforts have been made. The Oslo Accords, inked in the early 90s, stand out as a beacon of hope. These agreements, signed between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, were aimed at achieving a peace treaty based on the United Nations Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338. A mutual recognition was established, and the idea of Palestine gaining more self-governance in phases was introduced. However, the road to peace is often not a straight one. The Oslo Accords, while groundbreaking, were not entirely successful. The Accords were criticized for their lack of clarity on key issues such as Israeli settlements and the status of Jerusalem, topics that continue to fuel the conflict today. Fast forward to the year 2000, the Camp David Summit was another significant attempt at resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The summit, mediated by then US President Bill Clinton, tried to negotiate a final status settlement, but like the Oslo Accords, it too failed to reach a resolution, mainly due to disagreements over Jerusalem and Israeli settlements. These settlements, areas where Israeli citizens live in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, are a contentious issue. The international community generally considers them illegal, but Israel disputes this. They've become a significant obstacle to peace, as they are seen as an attempt by Israel to establish facts on the ground, altering the demographics in favor of Israel. Jerusalem's status is another sticking point. Both Israelis and Palestinians claim Jerusalem as their capital. The city's historical, religious, and political significance makes it a hotly contested issue. The current state of the conflict is complex. Both sides have legitimate grievances and aspirations that need to be acknowledged and addressed. The situation is further complicated by internal politics, regional instability, and international relations. The road to peace is fraught with challenges, but understanding the history of the conflict is the first step towards finding a resolution. In summary, the Israel-Palestine conflict is a complex issue with deep historical roots. We've journeyed through the emergence of Israel, the subsequent wars and uprisings, to contemporary peace efforts. It's clear that this conflict isn't black and white, and understanding its complexities requires appreciating diverse perspectives. It's a reminder of the importance of empathy and informed discourse in navigating geopolitical landscapes. Remember, every conflict has multiple narratives, and understanding them is the key to fostering dialogue and hopefully, one day, peace.